Well, it's Broke Capitalist coming at you on a Friday. Happy Thomas Sowell Friday. Hope you are looking forward to this. Got a lot of stuff going on out there. Trump just got indicted. What is going on with the world? We are about to have a central bank digital currency in the United States, which means you or someone you love in the near future will not be able to sell dime bags. just catch up with that if you don't know what I'm talking about. All right. So today what I'm going to do is you're probably looking on your screen and saying, I've seen this lady before, and that's Kevin Samuels, and, he just roasted her. But I'm going to do what I consider a magic trick. I'm going to take this conversation and apply it to a conversation Thomas Sowell, well, if you want to call it a conversation, Thomas Sowell was having with Joe Biden during Justice Bork's judicial hearing to be nominated for the Supreme Court, blah, blah, blah. He didn't get in, obviously, but anyway, a lot of people know about this conversation, so I'm tying both together. And I got a little special treat from a book called The Mind of the South that you want to stick around for. So, and that'll kind of bring you some new insights, I should say. All right, so let's get going with this.
Regular type dude.
How tall are you?
I am 5'3".
Dress size?
I am a medium.
Dress size? Number?
A 10.
How much did you weigh the last time you weighed yourself?
157.
First face out of the shower, just your natural face. On a scale from 1 to 10, what would you rank your looks?
Natural face.
Okay, first face out of the shower, your natural face. You can't use 7. What would you rank yourself, 1 to 10?
A 6.
Okay. A 6 is right above average. A 5 is average, right? You're 5'3", 100, dress size 10, so that's above average weight. 5'3", you should go for the dress size 4. 4'6", 125 pounds. Even if I believe you're 157, 160, you're almost 33 pounds, 33% over your ideal target weight. And you have listen. If you're
she got tricked.
If you're average to cute looking, if you're below average health from a weight standpoint, and you have 2 children, overall, does that make you below average, average, or above average? Factor all those things in together.
Average.
So why should you get anything over? Then why should you get above average? What do you mean settle for? You should get what you are.
I see millionaires with average women all the time.
They don't have big chest tattoos either, and 2 other kids. Man, I'm just saying. Okay, I want to. No. I mean, let's be honest. Why should an average woman say she's settling for an average man?
All right. What I want to point out here is one, as you all probably know, the lady is somewhat delusional. 2, she's not unusual as far as I can tell. Like, it's just not. And it's a principle behind this thought process that, Samuels doesn't really go into, to my knowledge, but Thomas Sowell did. Here it is. Equal opportunity versus equal outcomes. And you're like, what? Where did that come from? Look, she sees millionaires with average women all the time. Guess what? That average woman didn't meet that guy the day his bank account said millionaire, right? She met him most likely when he was broke, struggling, and had a dream. He was looking for an opportunity to just make something of himself. Now, after all this blood, sweat, and tears, you become a millionaire, right? You want to hold on to that because you know what you had to sacrifice to get it. You will be a new fool to go out, meet some random woman say, hey, babe, you know, I'm a millionaire. Why not? I think I want to marry you. But you don't trust her. You got a lot to lose. Right? Now, I ain't going to say there ain't no lottery winners out there and they become brand new. When I say lottery winners, I mean like entertainers. They got picked to be an entertainer. They get all this paid, all this money to represent a product, a brand, to sell advertising. You know, athletes, they put in a lot of work. Somebody chooses them to to be on the team. They get paid. They get endorsement deals. They sell tickets. I'm talking about the business owners who sacrifice blood, sweat, and tears. And I'm not disparaging athletes and entertainers, but I'm just making a point, right? They're not just going to wake up after they become a millionaire and go after an average girl. Ain't going to happen. But for some reason, she believes this is possible. Now, of course, anything's possible, right? Anything's possible. But is it likely? Hell no, right? So why does she even think this way? Because way back in the day, somebody was trying to warn us of applying principles to reach a certain legal outcome, right? Now, unfortunately, he didn't specifically say the principle, but I'm going to say it for him because this is what he meant. But I'm going to let him do the talking, and you'll see how this ties in together. And if you don't see, I'll make sure you see.
Demagoguery on this point is especially uncalled for, since no one, as far as I've been able to tell, has ever seriously advanced any evidence that Shelley v. Kramer or Reitman versus Mulkey made any discernible difference in racial housing patterns. The question is whether political symbolism was enough reason to justify trying to make the Constitution say something that it did not say. In our preoccupation with specific issues and specific groups, it is easy to forget that all groups stand to lose as Americans when the law is undermined, as judicial activism surrounds all laws with a large and growing penumbra of uncertainty. If I want to summarize, I think I have 10 minutes, was it? I have about a minute, another minute. Fine. No one loses more than the Black community when their children are not educated or when judicial undermining of law enforcement makes their streets far more unsafe than they were 40 years ago. Legal principles are not just abstract intellectual matters. They are often far more important to far more people than the specific issues which provoke single-issue organizations to venom and propaganda. If more people will look beyond this propaganda to the enduring principles which should guide the law of the nation, I am sure that more will support the nomination of Robert Bork to the Supreme Court. I don't think that judicial activism has been beneficial to minorities. One of the reasons that is what I've mentioned earlier, that it's extremely hard for kids in many ghettos to get a decent education today. Let's say it's
judicial activism in painting in broad strokes is where a judge looks at the law, but doesn't like the outcome the law will provide if they apply the law as it's strictly written. So what they'll do is they'll come up with a backdoor, they'll massage the law to give you a result that's more favorable, right? That's what they're talking about if you don't know what judicial activism is. Propaganda, obviously, you should know what that is, but that is basically influence. I'm painting in broad strokes again. The influence of today, we would say media, social media, mainstream TV, upon the judiciary to come up with outcomes that are more favorable towards those who are perpetuating that propaganda. For example, when Judge Kavanaugh would have protesters outside his house, but the judiciary didn't enforce the law that clearly states you can't do that, right? Well, why didn't the judiciary, that's supposed to be the Justice Department, is supposed to be independent of party, why didn't they enforce that law, right? Because of propaganda, blah, blah, blah. that it influences the whatever the dude's, the head of the DOJ, whatever, Marlin, whatever his name is, influences the way he operates. And it also influences a lot of the way a lot of judges rule. All right, so here we go.
Decent in education as I got in the center of Harlem 40 years ago, because the disruption is so much greater today and there's so little you can do about it. If you expel more Black males from some schools than you expel Asian females, that becomes a court case. You have the American Civil Liberties Union intervening in these places. There were students, there were parents actually parading, I believe in Chicago, with signs saying American Civil Liberties Union keep out, because they wanted their kids to get educated. That couldn't be done if you're going to have to due process every disruptive student.
And how did that work out for the public school system? Now, this was back, I think in the 80s, when it was a valid complaint then. Like, you have a disruptive student in your classroom, you can't kick them out. Why? Because they're working on this principle that, hey, you know, he's a Black poor kid, or he should be able to graduate from high school so he can get a leg up in society. That's the principle they're operating out of, like the equal outcome. Even though he's disruptive, he should have the same outcome as someone who's not disruptive. But what this country was founded upon, which is what's best for everybody, is that guy has the same opportunity to take. You can take advantage of that opportunity by sitting down and learning, or you can get kicked out of the class for acting a fool. All right.
I think one of the great handicaps that Blacks and other minorities face across the country is that they are systematically mismatched with universities in the admissions process. That is, if Harvard feels that it must have X% of Blacks, and if the pool is such that they can't get X% of Blacks at the same level as the rest of the Harvard students, they're going to take those Blacks who would have succeeded in some state university and bring them to Harvard, where many of them will fail. Or MIT is a better example, that the average Black student at MIT is in the bottom 10% of MIT students in math. But he is in the top 90% of all American students in math, because MIT students are so phenomenal in mathematics. Something like 1/4 of all the Black students going to MIT do not graduate. You're talking about a pool of people who score at the 90th percentile in math, whom you are artificially turning into failures by mismatching them with the school. The problem is not whether you believe the school desegregation should have ended.
You guys get that? You take successful people, highly successful people out of college or whatever, and because you're operating under this principle that you should have equal outcomes, the Ivy League or all these other schools are mismatched, have traditionally mismatched successful students, bumping them up to schools they otherwise they're at the bottom instead of the top, right? And so you're setting them up for failure based off of this principle now of equal outcomes. Now, if you're talking about equal opportunity, these people would operate, they would exactly where they need to operate. They're the top 75 percentile, so they go to a school where it's the top, they teach the 75 percentile, and then they would succeed under that principle of equal opportunity. But you're operating under equal outcomes, you mismatch people, just like her. She's mismatching. Hey, this girl with a chest tattoo, I just saw her on OnlyFans, and she got a millionaire boyfriend. I should have one too. That's extreme, but you get what I'm saying, I hope.
I believe it should have ended long before. George Bork believes it should have ended long before. What he and what I have objected to are the principles used in that decision, because those principles take on a life of their own.
The principles of equal outcomes. And he's talking about ending school segregation right here.
And they come back to haunt you in other areas. Obviously, this old phrase, the hard cases make bad law, derived from that fact. You dream up a principle to reach this result, and then the principle has a life of its own.
So the principle of desegregating the school.
No, that wasn't the principle. The principle was the reason that they picked for it.
Well, that's all I'm saying. Okay, the reasons they picked
Yes.
desegregating the schools, you and Judge Bork agree were the wrong principles and they should have not, so the court shouldn't have done that.
No,
The
should
legislature
have done it.
This dude is the president of the United States.
Oh, okay,
Both of us have said the court should have done it.
I see.
And in my case, and I think in his case, the court should have done it a lot sooner.
How?
They should have ruled that it wasn't equal protection of the law, because nobody in his right mind believes that there was equal protection of the law in the Jim Crow era of these schools.
I'm just trying to figure out what you're saying.
So if you missed that, the reason I felt some kind of way about Joe Biden was because he couldn't follow the simple logic there. Anyway, maybe it's not simple. I don't know. But anyway, that dude's the president of the United States right now. But there is an issue at hand here. What Thomas Sowell is saying, all right, so the court, Brown v. Board of Education, whatever, desegregated schools. We all know that, right? But the way the judiciary got to that decision, Bork and Thomas Sowell disagreed with, not with the necessary outcome, because Thomas Sowell and Judge Bork is saying that outcome they should have arrived at that outcome back in the 1920s and 30s when Jim Crow laws got enacted. It's because of Jim Crow laws that you had school segregation. So the judiciary, then under existing laws, then under the Equal Protection Clause, then should have said these mandates or laws that blacks can't go to this school is unconstitutional. It's right there in black and white. Just make the judgments, then we wouldn't have had these problems. This is school segregation. Brown v. Board of Education was 54, I think, or 64 or something like that. You shouldn't have had to wait this long to get the schools desegregated. But what Joe Biden and a lot of other people in that day was saying, and to this day still say, well, there's so many racist people out there and they have the right to be racist, so we have to finagle the Constitution in order to come to an equitable outcome. You don't have to finagle the judiciary system. The system is already set up in place for the adequate outcome. He went to Harvard before affirmative action. You had black businesses and all that stuff going on, hospitals, banks, thriving neighborhoods, most importantly, safe neighborhoods. And, the nuclear family was intact. 85% of all children were born in two-parent households. That's the most successful thing you could be. I don't give a damn what type of car you driving, and you got six figures. If your kids are on crack, on the streets of Philly doing the lean because they high on meth, you fail as a parent. Sorry, just take the L and be better. Right? I know there's things outside of your control. Sometimes your kids are grown, but hey, that's another subject anyway. And how do judges come to these conclusions that Thomas Sowell is complaining about or did complain about? It's the propaganda that you're always hearing, that every white person you don't know is a racist. And you use that to influence the judiciary. We're all human. And the judiciary is like, whoa, these poor black kids, they're not going to have a chance if I don't become super save them. I got to save the black community. I got to do that. And then you hurt everybody, especially otherwise successful black people who want to get an education. You mismatch them with schools trying to be all, I ain't going to say that, but trying to help people. Right? Let people do what they can do. And I'm gonna keep going.
This is what bothers me. People are talking about how judges should be sensitive to this particular group or that particular group. And if that means anything, if it means he's applying the law differently, that's precisely how blacks were held down for generations in the South.
So literacy
applying the law differently.
So literacy tests, as long as they were equally applied, are all right.
Sure.
I thought you thought.
Now I'm gonna cut that here. You guys go check out the whole thing. That hearing was 2 hours long, so I just got a snip of it. But I want to read something from a book called The Mind of the South. I don't know if y'all can see that. Yeah, The Mind of the South. Here we go. Yes. No, skip that. All right, starting now. In 1876, wrote an old gentleman to a newspaper 50 years later. So in 1920 something, this guy wrote to a newspaper about something that happened in 1876, which is about 10 years after the Civil War. No, 20 years, 10 years. About 10 years after the Civil War, right? I stood in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and saw white youth after white youth turned away from the polls because they could not read and write, while my horse boy and other Negroes taught by Northern teachers were constantly admitted to the ballot. And I swore an oath that so long as my head was hot, I shall never cease from fighting for schools until every white child born in the state had at least the security of a common school education and a chance to go as much further as he liked, end quote. This is just evidence of what Thomas Sowell was saying. Literacy tests in and of itself is not racist, but that's the propaganda we get, right? What was happening with literacy tests, which Thomas Sowell may go on to talk about in this clip, is how a black guy can come up there with a master's degree in education and the guy at the poll says, you can't read and write. So the law for literacy tests, poll taxes, all that stuff is benign, right? You got the execution of the law that's racist, right? And there's definitely arguments to be made that the government should protect the most vulnerable from racist assholes. But there's ways to get to that, right? The way you don't want to get to, what you don't want to do is go with is a socialist Marxist ideology. You don't want to use that socialist Marxist ideology of equity to get to that outcome. Well, it should be like this. Let's ignore this foundation that we have called the Constitution and create this. Now you need a solution, but what's the best solution, right? If you're using equal outcomes, this affects that principle. If that's your guiding light, what happens? This happens. You got this woman who on the best day in the best light is, I'm not trying to be mean or anything, in the market of dating people, she's not average. Because if you're 35, let's say you're 25 to 30 years old and you're thinking about like settling down, she's not healthy, right? She's somewhat delusional, right? She has 2 kids by somebody else. She's below average. But in her delusional state, she believes she should get somebody above average. Why in the world would she think that way? Why in the world do a lot of women like her think that way? It's because she grew up with, you grew up with, I grew up with this ideology of equal outcomes instead of equal opportunity. She has an equal opportunity to get on that dating market slimmer, with a better education, with, I don't know what her kids are like, but kids that another man will want to be around, right? She can set it up where the baby daddies are okay if that's possible. If that is not possible, then she has to live in a reality where, hey, I'm not a 10, 9, 8, 7, or 6. At best, I'm a 5. I'm going to go find someone at my level and just be happy. And I'm going to teach my children the values of equal opportunity. and I'm gonna teach my children to ignore this principle of equal outcomes. And with that, happy Thomas Sowell Friday, everybody. Like, share, and subscribe. If you stayed this long, I really appreciate it. I know everybody's attention span is really short nowadays, but if you stayed this long, like, share, subscribe, leave a note down below. Peace. I'm out.